The coffee shop was nearly empty when Sarah overheard the words. That would shatter her. Carefully rebuilt confidence. You're nice and all, but let's be honest. You're not really date material. Her blind date? Marcus didn't even have the decency to lower his voice as he stood up, already reaching for his phone to check. Messages that were apparently more interesting than her company. Sarah felt the familiar sting behind her eyes, but refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of the barista who'd watched the whole painful scene unfold. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, practicing affirmations in the mirror, telling herself this time would be different. Her sister had sworn Marcus was one of the good ones. Apparently, her sister's judgment needed recalibrating. It's not personal, Marcus continued, though everything about rejection felt deeply personal. You're just, I don't know, too ordinary. I need someone who turns heads, you know? He dropped a $10 bill on the table, not even enough to cover both their drinks, and walked out without looking back. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the barely touched latte in front of her. Ordinary. The word echoed in her mind like a taunt. At 32, she'd heard variations of it before. Too plain, too quiet, too focused on her work at the children's hospital. Too much of a homebody who preferred books and baking to clubs and cocktails. The dating apps had been brutal, but somehow face-to-face rejection cut deeper. She was gathering her things when she heard the crash. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, had knocked over an entire display of travel mugs near the counter. The ceramic pieces scattered across the floor like shrapnel, and the child's face crumpled in horror. Her father, a man in his mid-30s with tired eyes and flour on his jeans, rushed over from where he'd been ordering. "Daddy, I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." The little girl's voice trembled on the edge of tears. The barista's expression hardened. "Sir, those mugs are $15 each. That's 6 of them broken." Sarah watched the man's face pale as he pulled out his wallet, counting bills that clearly weren't enough. "I can pay for half now and come back tomorrow with the rest. We just moved here and I haven't gotten my first paycheck yet. Store policy says damages must be paid immediately." The little girl was crying now, and Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Before she could think twice, she was standing at the counter, her credit card already in hand. "I'll cover it." 3 faces turned to her in surprise. The barista looked skeptical, the father looked stunned, and the little girl's tear-stained face filled with hope. "You don't have to do that," the man said quickly. "I can figure something out." "It's already done," Sarah said, handing her card to the barista. She knelt down to the little girl's level. "Accidents happen, sweetheart. I broke my mom's favorite vase once. The important thing is that you're not hurt." The child threw her small arms around Sarah's neck, and something warm spread through Sarah's chest, something that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with connection. "Thank you," the father said, his voice thick with emotion. "Really, I'm Daniel, and this is my daughter, Emma. We just moved to town, and everything's been overwhelming." Sarah introduced herself, and somehow, what should have been a brief exchange turned into conversation. Daniel explained he was a single dad, recently relocated for a teaching position that didn't start for another week. Money was tight, Emma was struggling with the transition, and he was doing his best to hold everything together. "The hardest part is she keeps asking about her mom," Daniel said quietly, glancing at Emma, who was now carefully collecting the broken pieces with a dustpan the barista had grudgingly provided. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her mother chose not to be part of her life? Sarah's heart ached. You love her enough for 2 parents. She'll understand that eventually. Over the next hour, Sarah learned that Daniel was an art teacher with a passion for helping kids express themselves. Emma was shy but creative, already showing talent in drawing. They'd moved from 3 states away, leaving behind everything familiar because Daniel wanted a fresh start where his ex-wife's family couldn't constantly undermine his parenting. When Emma grew restless, Sarah pulled out a small sketchbook. She kept in her bag, a habit from her own childhood. She taught Emma how to draw simple animals, their heads bent together over the pages while Daniel watched with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. "You're good with her," he said softly. "I work with kids at the hospital. It's my favorite part of the day." Something shifted in the air between them. When they finally parted ways, Daniel insisted on getting her number. "Not for a date or anything," he said quickly. Emma really connected with you. Maybe we could get coffee again? As friends?" Sarah agreed, expecting nothing. But Daniel texted the next day, then the day after. Not romantic messages, just updates about Emma's day, questions about the neighborhood, pictures of Emma's drawings. Sarah found herself responding eagerly, looking forward to each notification. 2 weeks later, Daniel invited her to Emma's first day at her new preschool's art showcase. Sarah went, telling herself she was just being supportive. But when Emma ran to her with a painting of 3 stick figures, labeled Daddy, Me, and Miss Sarah, she felt her eyes burn with unexpected tears. "She talks about you constantly," Daniel admitted as they stood together, watching Emma show her artwork to other parents. "You've made this transition so much easier for her. For both of us." Their friendship deepened naturally. Sarah helped Daniel navigate the town, recommended the best grocery stores, even volunteered to watch Emma when Daniel had a teacher training. She baked cookies for Emma's class and taught her how to make friendship bracelets. She never asked for anything in return. She simply showed up. One evening, 3 months after their first meeting, Daniel invited Sarah over for dinner. Emma went to bed early. Leaving them alone on the back porch under string lights Daniel had just hung. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said, his voice serious. "Someone from my old life called last week. An ex-girlfriend who heard I'd moved. She wanted to reconnect, try again." Sarah's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. "Oh?" "I told her I wasn't interested." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Because I've spent the last 3 months falling in love with someone else." Sarah's breath caught. "You show up, Sarah, not just for me, but for Emma. You remember that she doesn't like tomatoes. You know her favorite color is purple. And you brought her purple paint without being asked. You learned how to braid hair so she could have the style she wanted for picture day." His voice grew thick. "You're kind without expecting anything back. You're selfless without keeping score. You see us, really see us, and you choose to be here anyway. Daniel, that guy at the coffee shop was an idiot. You're not just date material, Sarah. You're marriage material. You're the kind of person I want Emma to grow up around. The kind of person who makes me want to be better." He took her hand. "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, but I needed you to know that you're extraordinary, not despite being kind and ordinary, but because of it." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but these were different from the ones she'd held back. Months ago, these were healing waters, washing away every cruel word, every rejection, every moment she'd felt like she wasn't enough. "I'm falling for you too," she whispered. Their first kiss tasted like coffee and second chances, like broken mugs leading to beautiful connections, like the extraordinary possibility that existed in ordinary moments of kindness. A year later, Sarah stood in the same coffee shop with Emma, who was now 5 and chattering excitedly about being a flower girl. The barista, a different one from that, difficult day, smiled as she prepared their usual order. "Special occasion?" she asked, noticing Emma's fancy dress. "We're having an engagement party," Emma announced proudly. "Miss Sarah is going to be my mommy." Sarah knelt down, adjusting Emma's flower crown. Through the window, she could see Daniel setting up decorations in the park across the street, surrounded by friends and colleagues who'd become family. She thought about Marcus sometimes, not with anger, but with something close to gratitude. His rejection had kept her in that coffee shop long enough to witness a little girl's accident, to make a choice based on kindness rather than self-protection, to open her heart when she'd been ready to close it forever. The truth was, she'd never been not date material. She'd simply been waiting for someone who understood that the best kind of love isn't built on turning heads, it's built on turning toward each other, day after day with generosity and grace. As Emma grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door, toward the party, toward the future they were building together, Sarah realized that ordinary had always been her superpower. In a world obsessed with standing out, she'd found her place by showing up, consistently, authentically, lovingly. And that, she now understood, was the most extraordinary thing of all.